I think as you can see, the right lead is hooked up with the red wire, the left lead, the black wire, and they're pigtailed in, so they pick up the leads coming off of the locomotive as well, off the drivers. The blue wire has been pigtailed, so it can pick up the headlight coming off of this as it goes through the plug. And then this blue wire goes to, and the yellow wire to the backlight, which I'm going to set up using an LED, so we'll do that in just a second. And the LED is going to have to mount right here where the original light was. So it'll snap right in here, and I'll use some Super RCZ56 to bond that in, and once I do that, of course, then I have to go take a break and let that dry for maybe 3 hours before I can mess with this too much. But I've decided I'm going to mount everything into the shell, including the speaker, and just have to worry about these two wires coming back down to the tender and the wires that are mounted to the light. And that kind of simplifies my process. It gives me plenty of room for a large speaker coming up forward without interference. Okay, I hope you can see it. So what I've done here is I've taken an LED. This is a tower type, so I've cut off the tower to shorten it. And I've cut the LED itself down. I've installed a 620 ohm resistor, and then heat shrinked all that. So it goes to the yellow wire, which is what feeds into the backup light. The blue wire was pigtailed off, so it's going to be the positive common for the front light and the rear light. And then that will fit in right here, where the incandescent bulb used to be. And all I'm going to do to make that work is put in a little bit of this Super RC Z56. On both sides. Okay. And then just insert this down in there. And that should just about bring this over the top. Not a lot, but a little bit. And then we'll just let that cure. Like I said, it's going to take a few hours, but it will cure. So we'll just set this aside where it's not going to get touched, and it'll be fine. And that's kind of what it looks like. So now we can start on the locomotive. And the locomotive itself has this screw in the back end that needs to be released. And these two screws. And this screw up here. Once again, there is only one place for them to turn. Okay. And this should just keep that spacer handy. You're going to need it to put it back. And then you just have to be careful because you have these two motor leads coming off. And that's no more than Breaking that one off, then reducing that one. And then let's separate them, because they're just kind of, actually what they did was they didn't solder it, they just stripped it. But we're going to do this. So now all you got left on the locomotive is the headlight. Meantime, we're going to need to desolder some things. And these are pretty small spots to hit, as you can see. So you want to kind of be careful with them.
He said he was prepared to be parachuted into the island.
Okay. Now we're prepared. But while we got this part, we're going to go ahead and do a little cleaning and oiling and just make sure everything's looking pretty good. You can see the pickups right here. They're pretty primitive to get the power off the wheels. And we're going to want to pick those up off these sides here and run them back right and left. Pretty simple. Okay, now because you've got to be able to feed these wires into this environment here, you're going to have to make provisions. So what I've done here, I hope you can see it, is I have drilled a very small hole right here to allow the wires to feed from the tender underneath the base of the cab. Because you've got this truck back here, you've got to be careful that you don't get interference. And then I've drilled another hole right here that allows these wires to come up beside the motor. And I brought it up right next to the plastic part, and when it gets in here, I'll probably go ahead and put some of the Super RC Z56 in it to help support it, so as the wires move around a little bit, they don't have a tendency to break. It'll give them a little bit of flexibility as well. But those will come up in front of the weight. The weight will come back off to allow me access to solder these wires if it's just too tight, so that's not a big problem. I just put the weight on so I can make sure that I can clear everything. So I'll bring the wires through, flat, bond them, use the RC again to glue them right to the base of the locomotive. They won't be seen. Then as they come through, then they'll have to trace out, and they'll pick up a wire on each side of the pickups. And you can see all four wheels on both sides. Then the motor leads again are right here and right here. So I hope I had these things. I don't know if I did, but again, these pickups are on, all 8 wheels have pickups. And the wires come off right here, right and left, red and black. And I believe it's gray and orange in that order, and then 2 more wires for the front light. So there's only 6 wires that come up through here. So that's not a big deal. So I'll start branching those wires off. It's kind of hard, they're all the same color, so I have to cut them different lengths so I know which one's which coming off the plug. So I'll set that up now. Okay, so I pretty well got this wired. These 2 are the white and the blue, so they're not hooked up yet. But I've got the leads hooked up to the pickups off the right and left drive wheels. I've got the motor hooked up. And that's it. That's the 6 wires that come in here. So the only thing left to do is to hook up these wires, and that'll allow the lights to be run. So meantime, however, what I think I'll do is put it together and do a little test run to make sure everything's right before I hook up those two wires. It's kind of a pain in the butt to undo them later, but it's not a big deal. So we'll get back to it. Well, the other thing I was going to show, where this comes in, I've gone ahead and put heat shrink here and here. And I'm going to probably regret doing that because it's just not that long, and that makes it pretty stiff. But I'm hoping that I can get away with pulling this back a little bit, bring this one up, and then have it go into the hole just a little bit to protect the wires. So I'll try that in a few minutes too. Okay, so I've got the decoder in, and as you can see, I've got I have to kind of bond that in yet, but I've cut all the wires really short, brought the speaker wire around, took another one of my medicine containers, cut it down. It's been notched, so putting the speaker in, it's no big thing at all. So I'll put some adhesive on it, and then that'll be that, and then that's going to sit right down in here facing to the bottom. And then once that's in place, then it's time to put this in right here, and then bond it in place, and then this thing is ready to close up. So it's just about that easy. I think we looked earlier, but you can see where the light is. And that's dried, that's set up now, so that's going to be fine. So we'll just kind of keep going with this thing and get the speaker bonded in, and let that dry, and then go from there. So again, it's nothing more than taking the Super RCZ56 and putting a very small bead.
7.62 millimeters. The rifle. The problem is I can't tell which kind. Hopefully I can look it up on plates.
Why don't you start with what's not, Abby?
Well, I know it's not an AK-47. There's lots of those floating around DC. The grooving's all wrong. Without knowing the exact make of the rifle.
Okay.
Going on guesswork, but I think it explains why there's no eyewitnesses. Every rifle has a certain range where they experience maximum penetration.
Close that up.
It has to do with the ammo load, the length of the barrel. And
then again, it's nothing more than
we know our rounds went
taking the speaker,
ricocheted off an office chair,
setting the wires in place,
a sheetrock wall,
and just
there's no way that
pressing the speaker in place. I just use my finger to wipe off the excess.
the shooter was long range, really long range.
And then again, it's just a matter of letting this cure for about 3 hours. So I'll just take a break. So when I look to put the shell back on, I have to notice that on this model, unlike the other one, this piece back here goes over this area where I drilled my hole. So that was no big issue. What I did was, as you can see right here, I drilled a hole in there and then notched that out to allow this cable to fit in. So it's pretty well set. I have plenty of clearance with the truck coming through it, so it's worked out pretty well. And I have just enough cable to allow it to reach the caboose and plug in easily. So this assembly has worked out pretty neat, and it's very clean inside. I was very careful when I put my wires back in to make sure everything cleared. So make sure everything clears, especially right in here with where the flywheel is. You just barely see it, I think. So I can turn it with the toothpick and I can see that the cable is away from it. And it gives you room to literally maneuver. Even when it's put together, you can still get a little bit in there to make sure that the wires are away from the flywheel. So it works out pretty well. Okay, so I got the speaker put in. It was too tall, so I removed it. And then as you can see, I've installed the plug-in for it. I've got the wires down. It went into the cutout I made quite well. I've made it come all the way out to the front. I get a little bit more surface with the bonding when I use the Super RC Z56. I will just get some flat black paint and paint this. It's a little bit better angle. And paint this flat black as well. It'll pretty well disappear. Certainly not what the locomotive looks like initially, but that'll work. So the speaker's in, these wires will be routed around and buried, and then there's only a few wires, only 4 wires coming down that I have to worry about down here. So that pretty well takes care of that. We'll just let all this stuff dry up. Okay, so we've got it put together. You can see she's plugged in. She doesn't like getting that close, I guess.
Hey, this is my web page.
Yeah, leave it alone, please.
But it's mine.
So the headlight's not working, but let's put it in reverse. The bell works. The whistle works. I may just go ahead and open it up and put an LED in for the headlight. I'm barely giving it any throttle at all, but the sound's ahead of the power, so I may have to increase the starting voltage for it. So it works. It now has sound. The backup light works. You can turn it on and off. I'm amazed at the blue tint that it gives me, because it's a white light. Obviously it's got a little bit of a blue to it. Like I say, it's not the easiest conversion, but it's a successful conversion. For International Hobby Corporation, I almost said it wrong. I'm pretty pleased with it.